in front of a stunned national audience. Ivanka Trump strutted onto the stage with a smug little smirk, fully loaded and ready to bury Barack Obama under her father's results, only to watch in real time as the former president calmly dismantled her entire act, turned her family loyalty into a punchline, and then dropped the one question that made her perfect mask shatter like cheap glass, exposing the uncomfortable truth she'd spent years desperately trying to hide. The studio lights felt hotter than usual that night. Ivanka Trump walked onto the stage first, shoulders back, chin high, her blonde hair perfectly in place, like she was ready for war. She wasn't here to play nice. She came to provoke, to push Barack Obama off balance right from the start, and everyone in the room could feel it. Obama followed a few seconds later, calm as ever, wearing a simple dark suit and that familiar half smile. He didn't look like a man walking into a trap. He just nodded politely at the crowd and sat down across from her. The moderator, a veteran journalist known for handling fireworks, smiled at both of them. "Welcome to what should be a fascinating conversation on leadership in America," he said, keeping his tone light. "Mr. President, Ms. Trump, it's good to have you both here." Obama gave a small laugh and a nod. Ivanka smiled too, but her eyes stayed locked on Obama like she was sizing up prey. The first few minutes were polite small talk. Obama joked lightly about how the job of president ages most people except him. The audience chuckled. Ivanka added that her father always said the work kept him fired up, never worn out. It all sounded friendly on the surface, but underneath the air was thick. Everyone watching knew this wasn't going to stay polite for long. Then Ivanka leaned forward slightly, her voice smooth but with an edge. "Leadership isn't about giving beautiful speeches or writing books after you leave office," she said, looking straight at Obama. "It's about action, real results. My father proved that every single day." Obama just listened, hands folded on the table, nodding once like he was actually considering her words. He didn't interrupt. He didn't fire back. That calm seemed to annoy her even more. She pushed harder. "Some people build their legacies with words and memoirs. Others build them with real things, jobs, buildings, opportunities. That's the difference." The audience shifted in their seats. A few whispers broke out. Ivanka sat back, a small smirk pulling at her lips. Obama waited a beat, then spoke in that steady, low voice everyone remembered from his presidency. "Results for whom?" he asked simply. The question landed like a quiet bomb. Ivanka's smirk froze for half a second. She let out a short, sharp laugh, trying to brush it off. "For the American people, of course," she shot back, but her tone had already sharpened. Ivanka didn't let the moment cool. She jumped right back in, voice confident and cutting. "My father doesn't hide behind fancy talk. He gets things done even when people criticize him. That's leadership, not 8 years of hope and change that left a lot of folks still struggling." Obama tilted his head slightly, still calm, still listening like a teacher hearing out a student. The audience leaned forward. You could feel the energy changing, like the whole studio was holding its breath. He finally replied, short and direct. "Results matter. But results for the few or results for the many? That's the real question." Ivanka laughed again, louder this time, but it sounded forced. "Typical," she said, glancing at the moderator like they were sharing a joke. "Always the same polished answers. People are tired of that. They want action." A ripple of reaction moved through the crowd. Some claps, some uneasy murmurs. The first real tension of the night had arrived, and it was only the opening round. Obama's face stayed even, but his eyes had that quiet focus that made clear he was just getting warmed up. Ivanka thought she was leading the charge. In truth, she was walking right into the trap she had set for herself. The moderator tried to steer things back. "Let's keep it civil here," he said with a nervous chuckle. But nobody was listening to him anymore. All eyes were on the two people at the table. Ivanka wasn't done swinging. She leaned forward, eyes locked on Obama, and went straight for the throat. "You gave beautiful speeches about hope and change, Mr. President," she said, her voice smooth but sharp. "But a lot of people felt left behind. Factories closed, towns emptied out, and folks were still struggling when you left office. Words don't pay the bills." The audience stirred. Some nodded, others shifted uncomfortably. Obama sat there completely still, listening like he had all the time in the world. He didn't look angry. He didn't even look surprised. When he finally spoke, his tone stayed even and low, the way it always did when he was about to hit hard. "Between 2009 and 2016, we created 15 million private sector jobs," he said calmly. "Unemployment dropped from 10% to under 5%. We pulled the country out of the worst recession since the Great Depression. Those aren't just words on a page. Those are numbers real families live through." Ivanka smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. She opened her mouth to hit back, but Obama kept going, still relaxed in his chair. "Results matter, but they have to be results that lift everybody up, not just the ones at the top." The tension in the studio ratcheted up another notch. You could feel it in the way people leaned forward in their seats. The moderator glanced between them, sensing the conversation was slipping out of his control. That's when Ivanka played her next card. She turned to the moderator with a confident smile. "Can we show a clip? Let's remind everyone what hope and change actually sounded like." The big screen behind them lit up with a young Barack Obama on the campaign trail, voice full of fire, talking about the audacity of hope. The audience clapped politely at first. Ivanka sat back, looking satisfied, like she had just scored a point. But Obama didn't wait for the clip to finish. He raised his hand slightly and spoke directly to the moderator. "Since we're showing old clips, let's be fair. Can we play one from 2016, the one where President Trump said America would get tired of winning?" The moderator hesitated for half a second, then nodded. The screen switched. There was Donald Trump at a rally, pointing at the crowd, booming, "You're going to be so sick and tired of winning." The audience in the studio let out a loud collective gasp, then broke into murmurs and a few uneasy laughs. Ivanka's eyes widened. She jumped in fast, trying to cut Obama off. "That's not—" But Obama kept speaking, voice still calm and steady, like he was talking about the weather. They played that clip over and over. People believed it. Then came the trade wars, the factories that never came back, and the economy that was already slowing before the pandemic hit. By the end of that term, millions of Americans had lost jobs and small businesses. Tired of winning? A lot of families were just tired. The studio erupted. Gasps, murmurs, and scattered applause rolled through the crowd. Ivanka tried to interrupt again, raising her voice. "You're twisting things." But Obama simply continued, never raising his tone. "Hope isn't perfect," he said, "but at least it doesn't promise the moon and then blame everyone else when it doesn't show up." Ivanka's cheeks started turning pink. She shifted in her seat, crossing her legs tighter, clearly losing her rhythm. The polished confidence she walked in with was starting to crack. Obama looked at her directly, still calm, still in control. "Loyalty is beautiful," he said quietly, "until it becomes a shield for inconvenient truths." That line landed heavy. Ivanka's face flushed deeper red. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, searching for words that wouldn't come fast enough. Then Ivanka straightened up, voice steady again like she had rehearsed this part 100 times. "My father's leadership has always been rooted in family values," she said, looking straight at the camera before turning back to Obama. "Everything he does is for his family and for the country he loves. That's what makes him strong. He doesn't separate the personal from the political. His family is his foundation." Obama nodded slowly, a small, understanding smile on his face. "Family is important," he said quietly. "It shapes who we are." "I get that." Ivanka smiled, clearly relieved. She thought she had steered the conversation back to safer ground. For a moment, the tension in the room eased just a little. She leaned in, gaining confidence. "Exactly. Family gives purpose. It reminds leaders who they're really fighting for." That's when Obama tilted his head slightly and asked in the most casual tone, almost like small talk, "Barron is your son?" The words dropped like a rock into still water. Ivanka's smile froze mid-motion. The entire studio went dead quiet. Even the moderator looked stunned, his pen stopping halfway through a note. Ivanka blinked hard. "Excuse me?" she said, her voice a little too high. She forced a short laugh. "No, Barron is my brother. Everyone knows that." Obama didn't blink. He just kept looking at her with that same calm expression. Then he turned slightly toward the moderator. "Since we're talking about family, can we show that clip from the 2016 interview? The one where President Trump talked about how close he is with Ivanka." The big screen behind them lit up again. There was Donald Trump in an old interview, leaning back in his chair, smiling as he said, "Ivanka is a great daughter. We're very close, extremely close. She's always been special to me." The audience sat in stunned silence. No gasps, no murmurs, just pure, heavy quiet. Ivanka's face turned pale, then flushed red. She tried to laugh it off again, but this time her voice cracked. That's taken completely out of context," she stammered, her hands gripping the edge of the table. "This is ridiculous. We're here to talk about leadership, not this." Her usual smooth delivery was gone. She sounded rattled, defensive, the words tumbling out too fast. The camera zoomed in close on her face. You could see the slight shine of sweat starting to form on her forehead. Obama waited until the clip ended, then spoke softly but clearly. "When love makes us blind, it stops being love. It becomes protection of power." The silence that followed stretched for 15 long seconds. 15 seconds that felt like forever. Ivanka sat there, breathing faster, a thin line of sweat now visible under the bright lights. She wiped her palm on her dress under the table, but everyone saw the small movement. The audience didn't move. No one coughed. No one whispered. They just stared, waiting to see what would happen next. Obama didn't push. He didn't raise his voice. He simply sat there, hands still folded, letting the weight of his words settle over the entire room. Ivanka opened her mouth once, then closed it. For the first time all night, she looked truly trapped. The family weapon she had brought to the fight had just been turned around on her, and the whole country was watching it happen in real time. The moderator finally cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. Maybe we should move on," he said weakly. But nobody wanted to move on. Ivanka gripped the edge of the table, trying to claw back control. Her voice came out stronger now, like she was forcing herself back into the fight. "My father delivers results every single day," she said, looking straight at Obama. "He built the strongest economy in history before the pandemic hit. Jobs were everywhere, wages were rising. That's what real leadership looks like." Obama didn't interrupt. He just gave a small nod, then turned to the moderator. "Since we're talking results, let's look at the actual record. Can we show the clips and numbers?" The big screen lit up. First came Donald Trump at a rally right before COVID, pumping his fist. "We have the greatest economy in the history of our country." The crowd in the old clip cheered wildly. Ivanka smiled, nodding like that proved everything. Obama spoke quietly. "Biggest economy ever," he said. Then the screen changed. Unemployment numbers flashed up, 3.5% before the pandemic, the lowest in 50 years. Ivanka started to speak, but Obama continued in that same calm tone. "It looked good, until it didn't." The next image hit hard. Unemployment jumping to 14.7% in April 2020. Millions of jobs gone in weeks. Small businesses shuttered. The studio audience let out a loud collective gasp. Ivanka cut in sharply. "That was the pandemic. Nobody could have predicted." Obama kept going without raising his voice. And here's what was left when he handed things back. The screen switched again. Unemployment at the end of Obama's term, 4.7% after pulling the country out of the Great Recession. 15 million jobs added. steady growth. Results every day? Obama said simply. Or results until the first real crisis hit? Ivanka interrupted again, louder this time. You're cherry-picking. This is unfair. The moderator leaned in quickly. Let him finish, Ms. Trump, please. She tried once more, voice rising. The pandemic was nobody's fault. The moderator cut her off. One at a time. Let's keep this civil. Obama stayed completely composed. I'm not here to attack anyone, just showing what actually happened. Leadership isn't just the good times, it's how you leave the country when you walk away. The audience was buzzing now, some clapping, others whispering intensely. Ivanka's face was flushed. She kept shifting in her seat, clearly rattled by the back-to-back evidence. After the last number disappeared from the screen, Obama turned and looked directly at Ivanka. He said nothing. He just looked at her. 31 seconds of pure silence. 1, 2, 3. The clock in everyone's mind started ticking. Ivanka tried to hold his gaze at first, but by the 10th second her eyes started darting around. Sweat beaded on her forehead under the hot lights. The camera slowly zoomed in on her face. You could see her throat move as she swallowed hard. 15 seconds. Her hands clenched tighter on the table. The audience sat frozen, barely breathing. 20 seconds. Someone in the back coughed nervously, but it only made the silence feel heavier. 25 seconds. Ivanka's polished mask was cracking right in front of millions. Her breathing grew faster, shallower. 31 seconds. She finally exploded. This is not leadership, she shouted, her voice cracking high. This is an ambush. Obama waited one more beat, then answered in the same low, steady voice. Truth often feels like an ambush to those who've never faced it. The words hung in the air like smoke. The studio was electric. Ivanka pushed her chair back suddenly and stood up, grabbing her notes like she was about to storm off stage. The moderator looked panicked. The audience leaned forward, sensing the breaking point. Obama stayed seated, completely still. In that same gentle tone, almost like he was offering advice to an old friend, he said, Running away doesn't make the mirror disappear, Ivanka. She froze halfway out of her seat. The entire room held its breath. Cameras caught every tremble in her hands, every flicker across her face. Ivanka stood there for a long second, halfway out of her chair, then slowly sat back down. Her shoulders had dropped. The fire she walked in with was gone. She looked smaller somehow, like the weight of the entire night had finally landed on her. The audience watched in complete silence, waiting for what would come next. Obama leaned forward slightly, his voice still calm and low, but every word carried power. Leadership is not inherited, he said. It is earned every single day in the choices we make when no one is forcing us. He paused, letting that sink in. Then he looked straight at Ivanka. Your father once said, I demand loyalty. He said it many times. Loyalty above everything else. The big screen behind them showed a quick clip of Trump saying exactly that. I need loyalty, in that familiar tone. The audience murmured. Obama continued, quiet but direct. Here's the real question. Loyalty to family or loyalty to country? When those two conflict, which one wins? The studio fell into a heavy hush. All eyes were on Ivanka. She opened her mouth, then closed it. No words came. She tried again, lips moving, but nothing. Her hands trembled slightly on the table. For the first time all night, she had no answer, no comeback, no polished line. The silence from her said everything. Obama didn't push harder. He didn't need to. He simply sat back and gave her a small, almost kind nod, like he understood how hard this moment was for her. That was the final strike. The audience erupted into loud applause that rolled through the studio like thunder. It wasn't polite clapping anymore. It was deep, sustained, and powerful. People were on their feet in some sections. Ivanka sat frozen for a few more seconds, her face pale under the bright lights. Then she stood up, gathered her notes with shaking hands, and turned toward the edge of the stage. Her high heels clicked loudly against the floor as she walked away. Each step echoed through the microphones, sharp and fast, like she couldn't get off that stage quick enough. The applause grew even louder, following her the whole way. She didn't look back. She kept her head high, but everyone could see the stiffness in her shoulders and the way her hand gripped her notes too tightly. As she disappeared behind the heavy black curtain, the sound of her heels faded. Backstage, everything went strangely quiet. No staff rushed to greet her. No one spoke. Just the distant roar of the audience still clapping for Obama. Obama stayed seated as the applause slowly died down. He looked out at the audience, calm as ever, then spoke in that measured, thoughtful voice that had defined the entire night. "Power that serves itself eventually destroys itself," he said. "When leadership becomes about protecting one family, one name, or one legacy instead of the people who sent you there, it stops working. It turns inward. It builds walls instead of bridges, and in the end, the country always pays the price." He didn't mention any names. He didn't have to. Every person in the studio and everyone watching at home knew exactly who he was talking about. Real leadership asks the hard questions, even when the answers are uncomfortable, he continued. It chooses truth over loyalty when the two collide. That's not weakness. That's strength. And history always remembers which leaders had it. The audience sat listening in complete silence. When he finished, another wave of strong applause filled the room. This time it felt different, deeper, more respectful. Not just for the words, but for the way he had delivered them all night, without anger, without drama, just steady truth. Backstage, Ivanka stood alone in front of a large mirror. The hallway was dimly lit and quiet. She stared at her reflection, hands trembling as she tried to fix her hair. Her usual confident mask had completely fallen away. Sweat still glistened on her forehead. She wiped it quickly, but her fingers wouldn't stop shaking. For the first time in a long time, she had no spin, no prepared statement, nothing. Just the echo of Obama's calm voice and those 31 seconds that wouldn't leave her head. Out on stage, Obama stood up and shook the moderator's hand. The moderator smiled, still looking a little stunned by how the night had unfolded. "Quite a conversation, Mr. President," he said. Obama gave a small nod and replied quietly, "Sometimes silence says everything that needs to be said." He walked off the stage without another word. As he stepped outside the building, bright camera flashes exploded around him. Reporters shouted questions, but he just gave a polite wave and kept moving toward his car. In his mind, one simple thought played on repeat. Real power doesn't need to shout. The night air felt cool against his face. Behind him, the studio lights still burned bright, but the real story of the evening had already been written, not in loud attacks or clever comebacks, but in quiet truth that refused to be ignored. Ivanka's heels had echoed off the stage as she fled. Obama's calm had stayed long after he left, and that, more than anything else, was the victory that would linger. The echoes of that night would be heard for a very long time.